Every major nation is buried under mountains of debt. So, if everyone is a borrower, who on earth is the lender? This is a central paradox of our time. The United States has a national debt exceeding $38 trillion, a record high. The European Union collectively shoulders about 14 trillion. Japan is close to 9 trillion. Even manufacturing giants like China and Germany, or resource-rich states like Saudi Arabia, are indebted for massive amounts. But a question lingers. If all these entities owe money, to whom do they owe it? Welcome. Two Winds of Thought, where we explore the hidden forces shaping our world. Here, things are rarely what they seem. Debt is more than just a liability. It is the very framework of our modern economy. Every conflict, every financial boom, every market crash is built upon an unseen architecture of promises. And when you trace this chain of IOUs to its source, you find a startling truth. The world owes money not to some shadowy cabal, but largely to itself. However, that revelation doesn't mean the rewards are shared equally. To grasp how our planet arrived here, submerged in over $315 trillion of combined debt, a figure nearly triple the global economy's entire value, we must travel back to its origin. Centuries before digital transactions or credit cards, the concept of a nation's debt was forged not on a trading floor, but in the crucible of conflict. In 1694, England was at war with France, its coffers nearly empty of gold. The king appealed to a group of wealthy merchants. They agreed to fund the monarchy in return for a perpetual flow of interest payments, guaranteed by the crown's future tax collection. To oversee this new system, the Bank of England was born. It was a game changer. The government could now deploy capital it didn't have. In exchange, the lenders got something invaluable, a government promise that could be bought, sold, and traded. That was the advent of the government bond, the kernel from which our modern financial world grew. France soon replicated it. The Netherlands perfected it. The newly formed United States leveraged it to finance its own revolution and, later, its expansion. National debt transformed from a sign of weakness into a badge of credibility. Did a nation's power lie in its ability to borrow? Empires once seized lands for gold. Now they issued bonds for interest. The ledger became the new battlefield. Jump forward 300 years, and debt has become the planet's primary product. The US is shouldering $38 trillion. Japan, more than 9 trillion. Global debt expands by an amount equal to $1 trillion roughly every 100 days. Every nation is a borrower. Every bank is a lender. And every citizen, through their taxes, savings, and retirement funds, is entangled as both. But who really holds the other end of these financial tethers? Let's begin with the United States, as its debt is not just a domestic issue, but a global one. Of that colossal $38 trillion figure, about half is held by the public, which means it's owed to investors, not other governmental agencies. Roughly 2/3 of these investors are American entities, banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance firms, and the Federal Reserve itself. The final third, around $9 trillion, is held by foreign powers. Japan leads this group with approximately $1 trillion, followed by China holding about $800 billion. Then come the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So, when you hear that America is indebted to China, that is correct, but it's only for about 2% of the total liability. The largest lender to the United States is, surprisingly, the United States. The Treasury creates bonds. Financial institutions purchase them. The Federal Reserve frequently buys those bonds back, injecting new dollars into the economy. As it does, American citizens pay taxes, which are used to pay interest on those very bonds, which then gets funneled into American pension plans. It is a self-referential loop. The obligation is authentic, but the creditor is primarily a mirror image of the debtor. This circularity is not unique to America. It is a global phenomenon. Japan lends to the US via treasury bonds. The US lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries via the World Bank, and those developing nations, in turn, lend back to advanced economies by holding their foreign currency reserves in Western bonds. It's a worldwide game of musical chairs. Only the chairs are made of promises. Each country holds another's IOU. Each promise is backed by another promise. It's like a casino where all the players are gambling with chips borrowed from their neighbors. The one principle keeping it all from collapsing is that no one cashes out at the same time. But there is a fourth, more potent layer, the financial markets. Behind each government bond is an intricate network of powerful institutions, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, pension managers, and central banks command tens of trillions in assets. These are the real judges of creditworthiness. They determine which countries can borrow at low rates and which must pay a high price just to stay afloat. When their confidence falters, currencies can implode, governments can be toppled, and whole economies can be forcibly reorganized. While democracy may choose a nation's leaders, the markets often decide if that nation will survive. The ultimate authority in this system, the modern architect of this financial order, is the central bank. Central banks do not just oversee debt, they are its manufacturers. Whenever the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank acquires government bonds, it materializes new money to do so. A liability on one institution's books becomes an asset on another's. Every dollar in existence represents a unit of debt somewhere in the system. Debt-free money is a modern myth. Every coin and every digital entry has an invisible IOU attached. For many decades, this arrangement has been sustained by belief. As long as investors trust that governments will pay the interest even if they never repay the principal, the gears of this machine continue to turn. But what happens when that faith begins to crack? We have seen glimpses. In Greece during 2010, the government's obligations became unsustainable. Bond investors fled. Yields soared. The European Central Bank and the IMF had to step in, but their assistance demanded austerity, tax increases, deep spending cuts, and widespread job losses. For a whole generation, a bailout felt more like a punishment. In Argentina, a history of repeated defaults has made debt a national affliction. In Sri Lanka, a lack of foreign currency to service its loans led to fuel shortages and political implosion. When the framework buckles, the creditors are suddenly exposed. The IMF, the ratings agencies, the faceless bondholders, they all appear, holding entire countries in a financial chokehold. And yet, even after a total meltdown, the same logic eventually reasserts itself. New loans are issued to cover the old ones. Past debts are reorganized. The machine simply reboots, placing a new name on the same old balance sheet. This is because, in our century, debt is not structured for repayment. It is structured to be rolled over. Governments today have no actual intention of paying down their total debt. Not today, not ever. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's accepted policy. When an individual takes out a loan, they must pay back the principal. Governments play by different rules. They manage debt like a perpetual credit line, issuing new bonds to settle maturing ones, a practice called refinancing. The interest payment becomes the core product, the price paid for economic stability. The global economy is now completely reliant on that price. Like a vessel that must keep moving forward to stay afloat, the global financial system now operates on confidence, not closure. The United States won't ever eliminate its $38 trillion debt. It will refinance it indefinitely. Japan has been rolling over its obligations for decades, with debt now surpassing 250% of its GDP. Still, its government bond yields hover near zero. Investors are not expecting repayment. They are expecting to renew the contract. But why? Because, for them, government-issued debt is the most secure form of collateral on earth. A US Treasury bond isn't seen as a risk. It's a foundational asset for global finance. Pension funds depend on it. Banks use it for security. Central banks count it as reserves. The system relies on governments never fully settling their accounts. Because if they did, the world would lose its most trusted financial asset. Can you imagine if Washington, D.C. somehow decided to pay off every single dollar it owes? Banks and investment funds globally would instantly see their safest assets evaporate. The supply of dollars would contract violently, causing deflation and economic ruin. Paying off the debt would demolish the very instrument that keeps the economy running. So, governments do the reverse. They continue to issue more debt, not chaotically, but methodically. The debt acts as a kind of pulse for the capitalist system, beating through every retirement fund, every mortgage, and every market on the globe. This is why when politicians speak of balancing budgets or paying down the national debt, they are often selling a fantasy. The objective isn't to erase the debt. It's to keep it manageable, serviceable, and appealing enough that the system never loses faith. Because when belief dies, the numbers become meaningless. Confidence shatters, interest rates skyrocket, and the entire economy, built on a foundation of rolled-over promises, grinds to a halt. That is the ultimate secret. The plan was never to pay it all back. The plan is to keep everyone believing it can be paid back. It is a closed circuit of trust. As long as that trust remains intact, the numbers can grow to almost any size. But that trust is not distributed fairly. When we claim we owe it to ourselves, it's a partial truth. Interest payments don't circulate evenly in society. They flow upwards, from taxpayers and workers to the institutions and wealthy individuals who own the debt. In this way, debt isn't just an exchange between nations. It's an engine for wealth transfer between classes. This is why global inequality has risen in tandem with global debt. The system is designed to reward those who own the financial promises and penalize those who only service them. If this dynamic feels familiar, that's because it's the same pattern repeated at every scale, from a single household to a nation, and from nations to the planet itself. The creditors are not necessarily villains, and the debtors are not victims. They are two interdependent parts of the same vast machine. The real danger is what occurs when that machine runs out of fuel, when new borrowing can no longer cover the promises of the past. That is the moment the question, who is the creditor, ceases to be a thought experiment and becomes deeply personal. At the apex of this global pyramid of IOUs, there isn't a single person to blame. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. It is all of them, and it is us. The modern economy has transformed debt into money itself. Governments create it, banks expand it, investors trade it, and we all rely on it. The boundary between borrower and lender has become hopelessly blurred. Debt once signified servitude. Today, it signifies stability. But if that stability ever falters, the illusion will shatter, and we will all be reminded of what debt truly represents. A promise that cannot be kept forever. If this shifted your perspective on money, be sure to hit like and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more deep dives into the systems that control our world.